welcome to the Mindset Michele TV show. We're so super excited for you to be joining us again today. And we've got an extra special guest today. We've got the fabulous James Michael. Hello, James.
Hello, Michele. Thank you. I haven't been called that in a long while.
The fabulous James or Michael.
Fabulous.
It's not even a Friday, so it could just be fabulous every day.
Yeah.
For those of you that don't know James, he's had quite an illustrious career working in military and then in the corporate space, and since 2000 setting up his own companies, of which he's got 8 today in 2022 when we were first recording this, and 8 companies, but 4 of them you're running yourself, and a particular focus on recruitment. So James, that is, a lot of experience and knowledge and understanding and background. So please share with people a little bit more about yourself and how did you come to be doing 8 companies in 2022?
Well, running 4 today. So I've had 8 since 2000. Yeah. It's a really good question, Michele. How on earth did I get here? So I'm a 59-year-old white male, Capricorn with an Aries rising. I like long walks. I know that's another podcast. I'm somebody who has probably been somewhat adventurous from a younger age. So I was raised in the wheat belt in WA, got out of there as quickly as I could and got into the military. And, one of the things that the military taught me to do was how to take calculated risks. And that probably seems to have been the common theme for me as a consequence afterwards. It was certainly an environment which for me, and it doesn't happen for everybody that signs up, but for me, it was an environment that absolutely encouraged me to step up and to give all I can give and be all I can be. I mean, I sound like an army recruiting campaign as I'm saying all that, but it really did. It brought out what was at that point in time the best in me, whilst at the same time also putting a lot of stuff into me as well in terms of, knowledge and wisdom and experience. And that seemed to kind of follow through, and I think as I think back on that absolutely was formative for me, because what I learned in that environment was what it was that human beings are capable of doing and being. Right. And I mean that in the positive sense, because, we all know that human beings can be awful creatures as well from time to time. But yeah, what it instilled in me was that if you give it a go, there's some chance that you're going to be able to pull it off and you're going to achieve things. And so I guess I just had that mindset in me. And I think like a lot of people, I reached a point in time, and it was around, 2000, where I'd kind of had enough of being somebody else's employee. And I had enough courage in me to kind of say, you know what, I'm going to give this a go myself. I'm going to become an employer rather than just be an employee. And, all of the things that I had learned in the military in terms of planning and task allocation and, forecasting and all those sorts of things all just kind of stood me in good stead. And then what I've gone and done over time is as I've got an understanding about, particularly in the arena of business to business, and building businesses that serve other businesses, what I've consistently looked for is where are there gaps? Sometimes I've got a bit of a low threshold for boredom. So I might get bored with a business at some stage and think, okay, what else can I do? Where else is there an opportunity? So I'm a bit opportunistic in that regard as well. And so I give things a go. Not every business has been successful. I've had 2 spectacular failures. I've got very, very close to bankruptcy in one instance, but none of that was ever enough to kind of throw me off track. So that's a little bit about me.
What an amazing story, James. And I really love being a WA girl myself. I love finding people that have, left WA and really built successful lives. For people that aren't from Perth or West Australia, it's the most isolated city in the world. So you do grow up with that very strong connection to earth and to nature because of all the natural disasters that happen every year with the heat. But also growing up in that small town and then coming into the big world, whatever way that you might enter it. And it sounds like for you, James, that, you know, the military was very much that way. You said that, you know, how to take calculated risks and human beings, what they are capable of in that wonderful sense of the word of giving it a go. And it sounds like as you're emerging from, in a sense, that cocoon of the wheat belt, and as a young man learning about your own capabilities and your own abilities, it was a wonderful environment. We do sound like an ad, don't we?
We do.
But it was a wonderful environment to learn specialist skills, learn about that planning and forecasting and the other things you mentioned, which are then skills that are very applicable anywhere else in life and throughout the rest of your life, as you've shown. I'm interested in that very different way of living and being throughout your journey of life, whether it's a young man growing up in the wheat belt or in the army in that very rigid, regimented, and corporate with its own kind of rules and world, to the entrepreneur world that you've been in now since 2000. And with that, you know, being a different person, kind of reinventing yourself in these different worlds, what would you say now you say is success for you after that very extensive experience?
Look, I'm a very big fan of Jim Collins' book, Good to Great, which I don't know, you know, how many people in the audience will have heard of. But, you know, in that book, Collins basically talks about a series of businesses, which at the time he began his research, which went over a 15-year period, each of them were what we might describe as good businesses. Some of those went on to become great businesses, and then their counterpart disappeared. And as he worked out what the formula was behind the journey from good to great, the underpinning piece of all of this, and you'll immediately, you know, get the connection back to the military, was it's about disciplined people applying disciplined thought and taking disciplined action. And what I've found is it doesn't matter, you know, yes, obviously that was important in the military, but it was equally important in corporate, and, you know, and Collins was certainly describing the rise and rise and rise of corporates. But it's also been equally important here in entrepreneur land. You know, I think a lot of people mistakenly think that entrepreneurs are having a million light bulbs a day and they're constantly, you know, either innovating or ideating and all that kind of thing. And you know, an idea that is not well planned, not well thought out, and not well executed remains an idea that doesn't, you know, turn into anything solid and sustainable. So for me, the underpinning of disciplined people applying disciplined thought and taking disciplined action has always been important. I think, though, for me in particular, you know, I've done a number of assessments. I've also got a behavioral psychology background, and I've undertaken a number of different assessments over the years. One that really, really struck me, which I did, I don't know, it was probably 25 years ago now, revealed that I'm 2.5 times more inclined to take risk than the average person. Right. And I've got a little mantra that goes along the lines of life is a risk. In fact, it's so much of a risk, I know for a fact I'm not going to get out of it alive. Right. So by comparison, everything else is a breeze. Right. What am I really risking as I try something? I'm not going to lose my life over it. I know I'm going to lose my life eventually. So just do it. Right.
But this is an interesting, if I just unpack then some of the concepts around what you're seeing as success is it's that disciplined approach to whatever area it is that you're doing in your life. So that discipline around the thinking and the actions and the planning. So that is what success means to you in a sense, that journey. And I'm loving this because it's about the journey of how you're going along, whatever it is that you're in life. And it's quite a juxtaposition that the leadership testing showed that you were 2.5 times more likely to take a risk. And your first formative career was in military that was teaching you about how to take calculated risks. So I love how your natural personality, you then attracted something that was going to show you how to do it in a very planned and methodical way.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I'm a man of mantras, so you know, I'll probably be throwing a few more quotes out through the conversation. But one that comes to mind right now, and again, a lot of people may be familiar with this. So Ray Kroc, you know, the founder of McDonald's, had a phrase which, and I don't know if this is word perfect, but the essence of it was, if you've got a problem, make it a procedure, and it won't be a problem anymore. Right. And for those of us that have frequented a McDonald's, certainly in the days when you used to actually get served at the counter, less so these days when you're only served by an electronic screen. But, you know, you would go to the counter and we all used to have this joke. Do you want fries with that? Do you want a shake with that? You know, we always used to joke about that. But that was the procedure the kids had been taught to use. You'd hand over a $20 note to pay the bill, and the kid would say, from 20. That was the kid acknowledging that you'd just given them a $20 denomination note, and therefore they were thinking about what change they were going to need to give you. You know, sometimes I might go to Kmart, less so these days, but I would go to Kmart and, you know, I'd hand over a $20 note and the kid would say from 20. I would know that he or she had been McDonald's trained, right? And so, you know, if we come back to the calculated risk thing, if you've got a problem, if you've got a risk, make it a procedure and it won't be a problem or a risk anymore. Yeah, so, you know, I tend to live by that. And so ultimately what that's resulted in, you know, today at age 59 is for me, success ultimately is I have what I'll call freedom of movement. You know, I get to choose what I do with my time these days and how I spend my time. I'm not sure if it was you that I shared this with the other day, Michele, but for the last 20 odd years, I have changed my voicemail on my phone every single day, to the point that my kids can even mimic, you know, me doing my voicemail greeting every morning. The one that's changed more recently is if you call me on a Friday, my voicemail will say to you, hey, you come through to the voicemail of James Michael on Friday, whatever the date is. I don't actually work Fridays anymore. So please do feel free to leave a message. I'll contact you on my return on Monday. If your call's really urgent, send me a text and I'll respond to that. Right. But having that freedom to no longer work Fridays, for me, that's the definition of success. Freedom of choice, freedom of movement.
And you've so beautifully moved into some of the mindset tips or suggestions that I'm going to be asking you about. But I love how it's the freedom, and it's that, you know, taking a Friday off work now because you only need to work 4 days. It's kind of like a company a day, isn't it? 4 companies, 4 days a week. Mm-hmm. But I love how you're talking about Ray Kroc and the McDonald's, and that one of the key aspects about the mindset for you has been around this procedural, and the army and the stuff that you're describing is all about setting up processes and procedures for things. So it's lovely to hear that suggestion around set up processes so that your brain gets used to doing those processes, and you can be as simple as, I love that, you know, with the phone saying, this is today's message. I'm going to set up the message saying it's today, even though, so on a Friday, even though you say you don't work, are you working to set up that message on Friday?
So that's interesting, right? So that's a mindset question, because in my mind, I don't see that as work. I see that as me giving myself permission, right? And it's about me drawing a very clear boundary. I wouldn't have done that once upon a time. I would have just left my ordinary message that would say, hey, you come through to the voicemail of James Michael. It's Friday the whatever. I can't take your call at the moment because I'm currently either in a meeting or on another call. So please do leave a detailed message and I'll contact you shortly. So I did that for quite a while, even though I'd begun to wind down not working Fridays, because I was, I don't know, I guess in some ways concerned about people thinking, what? He doesn't work Fridays. What? You know, whereas now I'm very comfortable about the fact that I'm giving myself permission to absolutely take that Friday off first and foremost. But I'm also drawing a line in the sand. I'm making it very clear to people what my boundaries are. You know, and I'm not trying to do that in an obnoxious way, but I'm trying to do it in a way that, you know, continues to honor the commitment that I've made to myself and others as to how I am spending my Friday. You know, if I don't make that clear to my clients, chances are they're going to ring me 3 or 4 times that day because they think I'm in a meeting that might end soon.
That's so true. I think, you know, the whole 4-day work week is actually another really good example where there's that shift towards that focus on lifestyle, and in the entrepreneurial space, which is what you're reflecting, not just in the corporate world or the corporate environment as well. But I really appreciate how gently you're sharing around your process of permissioning yourself to say, okay, I'm not going to pretend anymore, because in some ways there has been that little bit of pretense, I think, for entrepreneurs, businesses, whatever, because of people's reactions possibly to, you're only working 4 days. Whereas now it's such a beautiful thing in a way, because everybody's so much more aware of mental health and well-being and wellness, that saying, I'm working 4 days and I'm sure you work very hard and very long hours. And then on Friday, permissioning yourself to say, okay, I deserve the day off. I'm going to go do thinking time, house time, whatever it might be. But it's that boundaries, like you're saying, and that delineation between I've worked very hard and now I'm going to go and use this as creative time and perhaps come up with the new business or the new whatever, but it's whatever you want to do in that time.
Yeah. I mean, ultimately, you know, it's that, I think, age-old question, Michele, of what am I working for? Right. And I'm 59. Do I still want to be slogging away at this end of my life? No, not really. Now, I know not everybody has that luxury, right? Not everybody's necessarily enjoyed the success that I've enjoyed. So some people don't necessarily get that choice. But if you have the choice, you know, and if you sit back and say, what am I actually working for? Am I working because that's what's expected of me, because that's the norm and that's the routine? Well, that's not me. And, you know me well enough to know that I tend not to want to conform if I can help it.
Well, as a risk taker, I mean, that's a big part of the not conforming. And you beautifully described how, if the worst case scenario was you died and you're going to die at some point, then enjoying the journey along the way. And if one of the key things you're talking about is to set up those processes, so making the McDonald's processes and then observing, and I really liked how you did this. You shared how you observed that process, not just at McDonald's, but at Kmart, so that you could see where other people were using those processes and you picked up on it. And this again is how to keep building and expanding on that success, whatever the business your own or working for somebody is. It's by setting up the process and then observing it and modifying it as needs be and as things change, so that, you know, leaders have been kind of moving from, okay, we're all in the office together, we're all working at home together, we're now going to be working in a hybrid sort of state. And then the next step is we're going to be working 4 days a week. And then the next step after that will be, well, half of my job's done by AI and so on and so forth. So it isn't a stagnant process, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially now. I mean, the advances that are coming along in technology right now are almost unfathomable. Yeah, I'm reading a book at the moment called 21 Ideas for the 21st Century. I can't remember. I could remember, but I can't pronounce the author's name. It's the same guy that wrote the book Sapiens. And as you read 21 Ideas for the 21st Century, which is about the bringing together of technology in that broader sense of the word, and then humanity, he paints both a frightening picture of what might happen, but also an amazing picture of what could happen. And yeah, we find ourselves in incredibly interesting times, I think.
Yeah, and I think that this is where I like to come back to some of those fundamentals, because I think, whether it was Henry Ford setting up the production process with the motor car, or Ray Kroc setting up, processes and making a hamburger and doing that customer service of that type. Some of those key elements, even like saying from 20, so that the person was telling themselves and telling you that they are aware of what was happening in that transaction.
Yep.
As opposed to many very disinterested looking people doing customer service. And it's not necessarily their fault. It's just that much of their task has actually become so transactional that there isn't that even element of interaction for their brain in the transaction. It's just, processing, or, waiting for the light to go off if it's a self-serve, and then they go over and flick their card. And, there isn't really that, there's no process training that they're going in of, I'm flicking my card so that they're telling you what they're doing. They just do it. So it's fascinating, isn't it? All of that fundamentals that can help you then with whoever's doing those roles. And I think that that's another element, because you're in recruitment, that you must be seeing a lot of, where with this great resignation and movement of people, that companies are still lagging way behind in, whether it's the McDonald's or the 4-day week or the whatever, some of those lifestyle elements that will help a new employee come in and go, oh, okay, this is the McDonald's version of this company in this task or this role. The companies haven't caught up to that, but also they haven't recognized the importance of lifestyle to get that person in the first place.
Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting. There've been some absolutely tectonic shifts that have occurred, certainly even in my lifetime, right? As we came to the end of the 20th century, and humanity tends to do this at great moments in time. And sometimes a great moment in time is simply the ticking over of a clock, right? So as we went from December 31, 1999 to 1 January 2000, that was a momentous occasion, which, and the lead up to it, and for a good number of years afterwards, it causes us as human beings to kind of reflect and say, okay, so how far have we come? Where are we today? And where are we versus where we hoped we might be? And what does the future actually hold? And what does it look like? And so we get very, very kind of navel gazy. And, we were just starting to come out of that then when, 9/11 happened. And, with 9/11, the ripple effect of that in terms of causing people to really, certainly in the Western world, fundamentally question, my God, what does our world look like now? What does our future look like? And out of that was born, interestingly, a massive shift in the kinds of houses we wanted to live in. We started buying homes that had indoor cinemas, the media room. We started buying massive, great big barbecue sets and outdoor wine bars and all those kinds of things. We no longer wanted to go out because out there was scary, right? And so it's what I describe as back to the village. And so that was an outcome of 9/11. So, we start to then get some more momentum on, and we had the GFC. Again, cataclysmic worldwide, really stopping and making us think, what the hell does the future hold? We start to come out of that, COVID. We start to come out of that, and now there's talk of a global recession, and there's a threat every second day from Putin about nuclear war. Down here, of course, we're talking about the Chinese threat, et cetera, et cetera. there's been some absolutely cataclysmic or almost cataclysmic events, the number of which kind of stagger me when I kind of, when I think about it in that way, through which we've all had to persevere and continue and keep on keeping on. And the likes of you and I have had to keep, faith in the vision, faith in this thing that we're pursuing. Not quite sure where I'm going with all of that, but
it's a wonderful, wonderful insights, and thank you so much for sharing those insights, because I think in a very interesting and gentle way, you were again sharing about those tectonic shifts. So whether it was 2000, 9/11, the GFC, and then the pandemic. What I would say, if I look at it in a longitudinal sense, is you picked up on it very brilliantly. It's that move back to the village, and it's moved back to your local community, which COVID was another seismic shift, if you like, where your local village can now actually be online. It can be people that share the same values, that they might not live next door to you or something like that.
Yeah.
And I do know we could talk for many more hours, but I think the key of that is, again, coming back to, well, what is the mindset then? So even if I can connect to everybody that's got blue eyes, for example, or like I have set up a group on Facebook for Michele's with 1L. So I've got this community, a global community of Michele's with 1L. But it's, thinking through, well, what does that mean, and what am I going to do with the community and stuff like that? And so far it's been, for me and the Michelles, sharing the stories of, we spend a whole life explaining people how to spell our names.
Mm-hmm.
So different people, never met, never going to meet, but we have those same shared stories. So I think as that mindset for success, and that looking for setting up the processes, that those tectonic shifts and those changes that are going to keep happening faster, mean that it's even more important to find those tribes, to build up those networks, and to really hone in, like you again beautifully shared. You're 59, what am I doing? Why do I want to be doing this? I don't want to be working 7 days a week, 14 hours a day at this stage. So what is important? So it comes again beautifully around to that lifestyle question.
Yeah, absolutely.
So James, if people wanted to talk to you, because you're actually in recruitment, I don't know how much we've talked about recruitment today, but if people are in recruitment, or even if they wanted to talk to them about 8 companies, the success and failure with some of those companies, then I know that you've so beautifully offered to talk through and explain some of your experiences with people. What's the best way for them to get hold of you?
Probably to look for me on LinkedIn. So it's James Michael, fairly simple to find me on there. As you can see on the screen, just in case you do come up with several James Michaels, you're also looking for James Michael at Justified Talent. And yeah, I absolutely will extend that offer, Michele. I'm at a point in my life where I just love sharing insights with people these days. So yeah, sure. I've got 4 recruitment companies, but I'm far more interested in having, if people want me to help them recruit, then I will, but I'm far more interested in having conversations with people about, what are some of the things they can do, or the mindsets they can have that are going to help them achieve whatever they call success. So yeah, look me up on LinkedIn, hit me up. I'm more than happy to have a chat on Zoom or over a phone or whatever the case may be.
Fabulous, and thank you. That's such a very generous offer. And if you were sharing that extended generosity to yourself, what might be some of the fabulous advice that you might give to your younger self?
So look, one of the key things that distinguishes us human beings from, I think, almost every other living creature on the planet is this thing called an imagination, right? A long time ago, we lived in caves, and we were cold until we discovered how to create a fire. What on earth it was that led us to even entertain lighting a fire, I can't even begin to imagine. But that's an example. If we fast forward today, here are you and I, hundreds of kilometers away from each other, having a conversation, on a medium that is not connected by wires. Once upon a time, this platform that we're on was an idea in somebody's mind. It was in their imagination. So for me, probably the advice that I would give to a younger me, the risk thing, it seemed, was already hardwired into me. So I was always going to take risks. So the bit that I would probably encourage is follow your imagination.
Wonderful. And what an inspirational way to end today. Follow your imagination. I really, really love that. And James, thank you again. It's been such an absolute pleasure having you on the show.
Thank you.
And to everybody that's watching, thank you so much again for tuning in. And we love hearing the emails and the feedback we're getting from people about how they're really enjoying these shows and these fabulous, fabulous guests and the insights into how to create a successful mindset. But for now, from my heart to your heart, be great, be fabulous, and be you.